About 10 years ago, we were involved, that time I was with the Labour Resource and Research Institute, in a study on Chinese investments in Africa. It covered 10 countries. Namibia was one of them. And we found already that time massive problems in the labor relations. We reported it publicly as well. We published the findings. We reported it to the various trade unions. And now, so many years later, we see the same problem still persisting. So in the light of that, you have absolutely fertile grounds for others to come in and say, well, it's time to put an end to that. We've talked about it endlessly. It's been documented. We've known about it, and nothing has changed. So in that sense, it's maybe not surprising that we see that happening. But of course, there are also parallels to what happened elsewhere. But the core of the matter is that such deplorable conditions were allowed to persist for so many years.
Now, Herbert, one wonders that, you come to a country that has a constitution, you come to a country where there are established labor laws, but yet these trends continue to persist in the eyes of the government. Why is this being allowed in the eyes of the government?
You're absolutely right. And this is the core question that we need to ask. When we have very clear labor laws, when we have workers' rights entrenched in the Labor Act and in the Constitution, why are we sitting back and allowing it to happen? And what I've observed over many years is from the side of government an almost slavish attitude to foreign investments, always being scared of scaring them away, driving them away, and almost appealing all the time to Namibian workers to rather bear the brunt, bear the consequences, and not confronting the violation of their own rights. And why I'm saying that is because we've seen it many years ago at Ramatex already, with government having a similar approach, and many other companies over the years. And it's time to say, like you've pointed out, that there are rules and regulations that everyone who operates in Namibia is supposed to follow. And the Ministry of Labour and its institution, like the Office of the Labour Commissioner, are supposed to enforce that and make sure that we put an end to these kind of labour practices, because in Namibia's colonial history, we were shaped by those brutal and exploitative practices of Namibian workers. And 31 years after independence, in my view, there's absolutely no space, and it should never have been allowed to happen that long.
Now, many critics have also considered that unions have lost their radicalism. Do you share the same sentiments, and would you say that the AR Revolutionaries Union would bring back that touch of radical activism? And perhaps also touch on the fact that some of the unions are also aligned with political parties. Does that also in the long term also impact the role that they're supposed to play in protecting the employers?
Absolutely unfortunate. It's very unfortunate because it's been a process that has happened for a long time, where unions gradually lost touch with the membership, where they were becoming increasingly hierarchical and adopted even top-down approaches instead of being membership-driven and workers-controlled organizations. And as a result, the kind of militancy and drive, the social movement drive of the early trade unions of the 1980s into the 1990s has been lost over the years. And I think this is a gap that now others can, of course, step into and say, well, if the current unions can't solve these problems, then it's maybe time for others to step in. So this is, in a way, a sad reflection on the state of the unions, and the question of links between unions and political parties can, of course, play a role in that. For example, if the party is welcoming these foreign investments and is aligned to them and kind of defends their interests, then the party is, of course, inclined to tell unions that are its affiliates, be careful here, tread carefully, do not annoy the investors that we have lured into the country. They are the ones that we pin our hopes on.
What consequences do you think the employer will face now that they have been exposed in the manner in which they've been treating their employees?
Well, number one, the ministry has labor inspectors that can go anytime and inspect and then tell basically the employer what they have to do to abide by the law. But the workers themselves can also take the initiative and report them to the Office of the Labour Commissioner. Unfortunately, often workers have lost hope in that office because it takes too long and it doesn't take decisive action. But these are in terms of the formal procedures, the steps that are outlined. What we see in a case like this one that we're discussing now is that to some extent these established procedures and established institutions have unfortunately failed to live up to expectation and to defend workers' rights effectively. And that then paves, of course, the way for more direct action, and I think we will see more of that in the months and years to come.
Mm-hmm. Finally, Herbert, can you advise on the future of work, employers, employees, government, and trade unions going forward?
Well, we are at a watershed once more, and the question is, if we have laws and rights and regulations that are supposed to protect everyone and create a more level playing field in the labor relations scenario, but on the other hand, we see enormous power imbalances between employers and workers, very clearly tilted towards employers, then there is a question about how effective is the whole system, and maybe we need to review that and say, well, we need maybe other interventions and amend the current system significantly to effectively be able to protect workers' rights.